I was here sitting watching the news tonight, following the disaster that happened recently down in Texas. You know, the whole neighborhood, floodplain was underwater. People climbing to the rooftops of their houses and their RVs. Rescues were happening in boats, helicopters. You've probably seen the scenes like it before, but it never hits the same way twice. Every time it grabs you a little differently. But this time something grabbed me in a way I didn't expect. During one of the newscasts, a woman was talking passionately. Her voice was cracking, her eyes were red, her clothes were soaked. And she said, "I know our community isn't a big city. We don't usually get the funds or the attention. But we just need what we need, and we need it now. Please. We're tired of being treated like the stepchildren." And right then, something shifted in me. Because I wasn't just watching the flood anymore. I was hearing a metaphor. And I was the metaphor. And I'm sure a lot of people listening are understanding what I'm saying. Now, don't get me wrong. My heart goes out to every person down there trying to rebuild their lives and mourning over the loss of life. But something about that word stepchildren in the middle of a tragedy brought something up that I hadn't really thought about before. And it had nothing to do with water and everything to do with old wounds I hadn't looked at in a while. I mean, who chooses that word in the middle of a crisis? That's not random. That's personal. That's the voice of someone who's felt forgotten long before the flood hit. That's someone who's been living in the margins, feeling like they're only ever invited into the big house when something breaks. And I know that voice. I was once that voice. I grew up in a house where I was technically one of the children. I don't mean that in some dramatic Hollywood sense. No wicked stepmom or stepdad or stepparent, let's say. No evil plotting. Just that quiet emotional distance you can't always quite explain. That unspoken feeling that the rules might not fully apply to you in the same way. But sometimes you're included, but also you're not. Provided for, but not fully chosen. And the thing is, you don't even realize it at first. You think it's normal. You make peace with it. But then life hands you these little mirrors, like that woman on the news, crying for her town, but somehow crying for me too. There's something people don't talk about when it comes to disasters. We talk about climate change. We talk about preparedness. We scream about who should have done what. But we rarely talk about the emotional infrastructure that breaks first. We don't talk about the people who already felt like outsiders before the storm. The ones who knew deeply down they weren't on anyone's priority list. So when tragedy hits, it's not just the power lines that go down or the levees. It's the trust. It's the dignity. It's the belief that anyone will come. You know what I kept thinking after I heard her say that? Some kids sitting there in their living room that night, or tonight as I'm doing this, watching the news with their stepdad, hearing that woman cry out, "We're tired of being treated like the stepchildren." And probably most kids won't catch this, but I'm sure there is that one. And that kid's just sitting there wondering quietly, wait, Am I the flood in this house? Am I the thing that no one wants to deal with? So that's the ripple of these metaphors. They don't just describe disasters. They also echo into people's living rooms, into old wounds, into half-healed kids pretending to be adults. So yeah, I say that moment hit me. I mean, it hit me. That's why I'm here talking about it. Because I'm watching the flood like everyone else. But then suddenly I'm not. Suddenly I'm remembering birthdays where I smiled too hard hoping to be noticed. Or those occasional dinners where I wasn't sure if I was allowed to ask for seconds. Or hearing someone say, "We're a family, but only sometimes." All because someone cried, "Stepchild." That's the thing about empathy. It doesn't always look like hugging someone or sending thoughts and prayers. Sometimes it looks like facing the flood inside yourself. It's easy to feel bad for someone on the news. That's for sure. But it's harder to admit you see yourself in their pain. And it's even harder to say it out loud. That sometimes we're all just trying not to be part of the family that gets forgotten. So if this episode leaves you feeling something, anything, maybe it's not about pointing fingers. Maybe it's not about solving the world's chaos with one comment. Maybe it's about noticing that when someone says, "We're tired of being the stepchildren," they're not asking you to fix everything. They're asking you to see them. And maybe, if we're honest, some of us have been waiting to be seen too. All right. Those are my thoughts for tonight. Peace.